Have to repeat all that?
Well, we're not on camera. There we go.
There we are. Okay.
One more time.
All right, let's begin again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Palillo. I'm acting as Chair Pro Tem this morning for the Select Board. I'd like to call the Select Board meeting to order on Friday, April 7th, 2023 at around 8:01 a.m., joined by Roy Epstein, member.
Morning, everybody.
And the newest member, yay, Elizabeth Dion. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here.
Yeah.
Honored to join the two of you here.
Well, look forward to serving with you. And of course, our town administrator, Patrice Garvin. Good morning, Patrice. This is our organizational meeting. We're going to discuss the Select Board rules and regulations. My colleague Roy Epstein has made some minor changes. Then we're going to discuss and vote on offices. Then we'll go through a process which we do every year of Select Board, Committee, Board, Commission, and liaison assignments. Those are important assignments. And then we're going to discuss and possibly vote on ratification of the appointment of Jennifer Hewitt as interim treasurer collector. Is she joining us this morning?
No, she's actually busy in her new role.
And, oh, that's great. And then we're going to review the job description and posting for the treasurer collector, which many of you may know, that ballot question passed by a substantial margin, 68% to 32%, I believe.
634.
Was it 66-34? Yeah, thank you. And discuss and possibly vote on the appointment of a parking clerk. I also want to thank the community for the support of the new, the debt exclusion on the skating rink, which passed 61, 62, 61.
60-40 or 61-39.
Something like that, so passed overwhelmingly. So with that, Roy, I know you made a number of substantive changes. I've read through them. I have questions, but it would be helpful, I think, for Elizabeth and I, if you were to walk through them so that we can understand what your thoughts are. Please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there are two reasons for doing this. One is that there are certain parts of the current rules that are either obsolete or just not done, so I thought they should be removed, like including the name of the person who proposed an item for the agenda to be have that name on the agenda and so forth. Yeah. Right. But the main thing is my own view, and I gather other people share it, is that it would be preferable if the chair in particular did not rotate in April, because the chair is involved with town meeting preparations up to that point, and then the vice chair, who is the member of the Comprehensive Capital Budget Committee now, has been involved with everything involved with the development of the capital budget. And then just before town meeting, both of them rotate out. And it's unnecessarily disruptive. And the solution, in my mind, was to just change our rotation schedule so that officers still have a one-year term, and the rotation is actually mandatory, so everybody gets an opportunity to be chair. But to shift it so that the rotation takes place on July 1, which is the new fiscal year, town meeting is over. And I circulated, so the rules express that verbally, and I also circulated a chart that shows how it would work in practice to show that it's actually feasible to do it.
A chart?
I didn't see a chart.
The chart was not included.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
Whatever.
I'll explain how the chart works.
Yeah, okay.
So let's assume these rules are adopted, and it's now July 1, 2023. The way with the new rules, I would become chair, which is something that under the old rules would have happened today, presumably, but now that's advanced to July 1. And then the newest member becomes vice chair on July 1.
Okay.
So the chair, who is in typically their second year, serves until July 1 of the next year, And then they move off to be the liaison to the, or to become the member of the Community Preservation Committee. So in your third year, you become the representative Community Preservation Committee. Elizabeth, in this case, a year from now, would become chair, as she would have, except instead of becoming chair in April, she becomes chair in July. And Mark, you either go off to a well-deserved retirement or you become the most incredible member in history and go for another term, in which case...
Well, I don't think it's the longest. That's Mr. Flett up top there. Served
perhaps.
40 years.
But whoever is elected in the spring of 2024, since we already will have a chair and a vice chair who will serve until July 1.
Will be vice chair that upcoming July 1st.
Yeah, but then there's the question of what does the newest person do between the election day and July 1? And my proposal is that that person be the select board member on the Community Preservation Committee. When at that point, they're the newest member, they're getting their feet wet, and there's actually not much to do because the Community Preservation Committee has wrapped up their work well before that. And then come July 1, the rotation happens. Elizabeth would become the most senior person.
Okay.
No, I would become the most senior person. Elizabeth would, that's the rotation.
So I've got two thoughts on that. First of all, I think, frankly, for the new member who's rising to be chair, it could actually be very helpful for that person to have gone through 2 town meeting cycles before becoming chair. So 3 thoughts. So I actually like the idea of postponing.
July.
Yeah. Secondly, just as a longtime member of the warrant committee, I do feel it's been disruptive for the select board to reorganize in the middle of the budget process or coming toward the end of it before town meeting. Finally, as longtime chair of the Community Preservation Committee, it is true that the bulk of our work is wrapped up by April. So that is actually a good location for the newest member. So that is the one committee where the timing of the transfer doesn't matter. So I could see this making a lot of sense.
So Roy, now that you've explained it, I understand it. Last night when I read this, I was concerned because what's not in here, and I don't know if you're done.
Yeah.
What's not in here, what's been removed is sort of like the chair of the Board of Selectmen, which is an old term, of course, shall be the ex officio member of the warrant committee. That's not in the rules, but is that just an understanding under your changes?
I didn't want to have anything here that's already covered in the bylaws.
Is that in the bylaws?
I'm not sure that it is. So I have the same question. So Mark, let me back up and say, first of all, kudos to Adam Dash for adopting these rules in 2018. They were necessary. As usual, Adam was incredibly helpful. He did some similar things for us on the Community Preservation Committee. So I was a little concerned as I was going through the form to not lose, but Roy's revisions, I thought kept the bulk of it. Every time I thought something was missing, I largely went through and found it. The 2 exceptions were the warrant committee, because it's not listed as one of the statutory committees on the chart that we've got. So that's just a question I had, is the warrant committee.
Yeah.
And I specifically do want the warrant committee included because we had an unfortunate situation with a select board chair who refused to attend warrant committee meetings and refused to appoint a delegate. And so I do want the warrant committee specifically called out somewhere.
Well, so I think it's helpful just to say, have rules in one place. So the bylaws say the warrant committee, first sentence, there shall be a warrant committee of 17 members consisting of the chair of the select board or a member of that board designated by the chair.
So it's there, but we had a situation where a chair refused. So I just think it would be useful, given that history, to have that one piece.
Well, I don't think that a rule of this nature should actually supersede
The bylaw.
So if the bylaw is insufficient, then
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I didn't know it was in the bylaw. That was concerning to me last night, Roy. So
Okay.
if it's in the bylaw, and it's also in our bylaw for the Comprehensive Capital Planning Committee.
Right, and that is in the bylaw, I recall from.
Understood. And the practice we've had, Elizabeth, I'm sure you know this, is to the extent that the chair either refuses to attend under that situation, and we won't mention the person's
Yeah, I agree.
then that individual has an opportunity to, or should, frankly, has a fiduciary obligation, frankly, in my mind, to ask, I guess, whomever can attend, perhaps the vice chair and then the member. That individual never did that, just decided to,
Oh, I remember it
The
well.
language in the existing rules, I think, was addressing that situation by saying if the member is unwilling to serve, which the bylaw doesn't say, but I think that the situation we all have in mind was so exceptional that
I hope it's a one-off.
okay, all right. So explained it, I'm fine with the changes.
So the only other question I had, because I had a similar question about the Comprehensive Capital Budget Committee, but as we know, that's a statutory designation as well. Obviously, language needs to be updated to reflect Select Board, not Board of Selectmen. My one other question was Rule 5 about office hours. And it's not that that has to be a rule, but I just feel like it's helpful
To have it in
to
there.
state as an expectation.
We haven't been having office hours.
Okay, well,
So.
then maybe we don't want it as an
But no, but
expectation.
Elizabeth, look, I completely support the point of view. I started to have office hours through Zoom meetings, and the same people come, which is fine, but, you know, it really doesn't serve the purpose of having office hours per se.
Okay.
Although perhaps that's a practice we should consider getting back to. But I think, Roy, remember, I've sat in the assembly room at the library and no one showed up.
Yep.
I've been here and no one shows up. So that was the reason, and I know that's been removed, that we put in there that we have like public comment at the beginning of these meetings, which.
Yeah. Well, as long as we've maintained the public.
Well, that's the chair's, that's the chair's prerogative to have that or not.
office hours, the reason I took it out is that office hours don't pertain to meetings of the board. People are free to have individual office hours, and Adam was a regular at the farmer's market one day a month during the summer. And then occasionally, actually, that was a
And some water, Mom?
better venue than
I'm so
Love
sorry.
some too.
than having scheduled office hours. And I had quite a number on Zoom. There wasn't a single person.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing the voices of experience here.
All I'm saying is that
It's not funny, but I mean, people just don't come.
well,
Hey.
but people contact us plenty via email
Okay.
about when there's no schedule.
So asynchronous communication works then.
Yeah, and I think board members are on their own free to engage with the public in any way they like. It doesn't need to be part of the rules here because it's not.
That's why I pulled it.
Yeah, no, it's like morning sort of allergies. Elizabeth, I think it's noble and frankly needed to continue to have outreach to our community like you've just expressed. And I think we've attempted. I mean, we have calls. I know you talk to a lot of people in town and I do as well. So I mean, that's just another way of doing it.
Okay, it was just a question. Then honestly, the last question that I had was rule number 2, proposed rule number 2.
Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. The select board shall have 2 officers being chair and vice chair. The member with the second longest tenure on the board is constituted at the organizing meeting. What if we have someone like Mark, who's the by far the longest serving if you add up?
Well, that's why I say as constituted.
Okay, all right. So that's we have a fresh start date.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Then I have no other questions.
So I guess the question becomes then, does that mean that I'll continue as, I don't need to continue as chair till July?
So there's a one-time transition period to get from now to sync up in July, and that chair could be you. It could be,
Who's the vice chair then?
I would
Not
propose
me.
it to be me because, remember, the very last
Okay.
item here is any rule may be suspended by the vote of the board in any way. So I would actually propose, in the spirit of continuity, which is the idea of this thing, is that you continue as chair till July 1 if you're.
And then you roll in as chair.
Yeah.
Elizabeth steps in as vice
Well, and that
chair.
also allows me to stay on the CPC.
Yeah, okay.
Through
I'm
town.
glad you explained this because I was very concerned last night when I read it and I didn't see that the warrant, particularly about the chair of the warrant committee, chair of the select board being a member of the warrant committee. So I'm fine with your changes, Roy.
Okay, so my proposal would be that adopt the rules. The rules are actually silent on the transition period, so I would say then separately we vote, you be chair and I be vice chair until July 1.
Okay, that's fine.
Rules take over.
Here's the other point, if I could make it. Do you think, and I know you're a proponent of this, and perhaps you are as well, Well, you've been saying this to me for the past year, and I feel strongly about this as well. We're so busy, but one of the things that we haven't done as often as we should is on the substantive committees. And it could be the warrant committee, right? Even though I might serve, you'll serve there eventually. And the planning board, the ZBA, maybe other committees, we should have them, ask them to attend a meeting and report out, which we haven't done. Would you?
Absolutely.
Yes, that's actually a separate topic of discussion I'd like to turn to after.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
But I wholeheartedly
All right,
agree.
so do I have a motion to adopt the rules as amended by Roy Epstein?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the only thing to finalize this would be to fill in the date at the top, which would be, we would say April 7th, 2023.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
And so do we need to look at them again, do you think, or once we just?
No.
It's, I mean,
Okay, fine. All right, so let's move to then,
But we need to reconstitute the.
yeah,
right
so
now.
then I'm Chair Pro Tem, so do we want to make consistent with what you said? If you make a motion as chair for a period of time, right? So it would have to be a period of time in this motion, Roy.
So I would move that Mark Paolillo remain as chair of the select board until through June 30th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I move that Roy Epstein be appointed as vice chair of the select board through June 30th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Roy. I think the changes are fine with me, and thank you for explaining that. Okay. So we have the old liaison list. Let's get Tom's name in here. Oh, that's because we appointed him to that.
that's right, he's still acting as the board's representative.
So do you want to go through these one by one? Or do you want to make some general comments?
I would like to start with a general comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Having observed, so there are two types of roles that select board members play outside of meetings of the select board. One is as voting members of certain other committees, like warrant committee or community preservation committee. And the other is what we've been calling liaison, which is a non-voting role.
Right.
Let me cut to the chase and say that it's essential, of course, for members to remain on committees where they're a voting member because they're a key part of that committee. I think the liaison structure is simply not working because not only is it not working, it's terribly inefficient because we spend an awful lot of time in meetings and to spend hours and hours in the full meetings of other boards where you're not even a voting member, you're just really you're more in the audience than anything else.
You're a fan.
Is not effective. And moreover, it's impossible to attend all of these meetings. There are many meetings, there are many committees where one is liaison where I don't believe a select board member essentially ever goes. So it doesn't serve any purpose. It would be far more useful, I think, or effective from a governance point of view if committees appointed by the select board, we don't have any say over committees that are appointed by others, but if committees appointed by the select board submitted a report periodically, and we don't have to lay out an exact schedule, and it could almost be done on an as-needed basis, but it could be annual for some, semi-annual for others, and for other committees where there is some time urgency to what they're doing, it could even be monthly. And preferably, it wouldn't just be a verbal report, but would be a short written memorandum prepared by the chair of that committee, so there's a record of what's said and the information is then available to other people. So that my suggestion for the liaisons would be to actually not appoint liaisons to any committee where the select board member is not a voting member, but instead for us at some other point to decide how often we would like to have report outs by chairs of the other committees in the form that takes.
What are your thoughts?
I think it makes a lot of sense. As you both know, we need to do some serious strategic thinking for the town for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And I'm concerned, and I've already had some discussions with Patrice about things that we could potentially offload to the town administrator to free us up to have those really key strategic and vision discussions. And I also think inviting committee chairs to come speak to us actually raises their profile. To make them a formal part of our meetings. I think acknowledges the work that these committees are doing, gives them an organized opportunity to let the town know more about what they're doing. So I think it makes a lot of sense. That said, there are certain committees that I have a particular interest in, such as economic development and Vision 21 and what they're doing. So there may be times when we want to
You can attend.
voluntarily, exactly. There may be a few committees where we want to be a little more closely involved. But I do think removing the expectation that we'd attend these meetings, and to be a member and never show up actually feels somewhat disrespectful. And not because we're being disrespectful. There's just not enough time. We've all got a lot of things on our plates.
Yeah, so I actually came up with the liaison idea whenever it was in my first term, or back in the 1800s, and. And thinking that we were connecting, but I actually like Roy's idea better because and your points as well, to have certain committee chairs come and report out to us, because I'm the liaison on the Council on Aging. I've attended 1 meeting, 2 meetings this past year. I just show up. I'm the liaison to the Community Path Project Committee. I've been to a couple of substantive. I know you've been attending and listening in. It's not serving its original purpose, and that was for the liaison to come back to the board, report out in terms of what's going on. And so you've been more diligent about that, Roy, than perhaps I have. So I think I'm fine with not doing that and just vote on the voting member pieces. But have a commitment that on certain, like Community Path Project Committee, we have asked them to come and report to us every month. That's important, right? Mm-hmm. You could attend the meeting if you wanted to listen in. Or you can have a development committee. We've had them come in. You could attend the meeting if you wanted to. So I'm fine with that.
A basic open meeting question. If we're just listening in and not
both attend.
That's my question. As long as we're not participating in the meeting, we can't listen in. Right. Okay.
And the one thing it's not a caution, but the one thing I would say is that when a select board member does attend, there is a tendency with certain committees to sort of acknowledge that and give deference to the member.
So I think
frankly, that's not what we're there.
Yeah, I think we make a point of saying we are just here as observers. Right. We're not taking a formal role.
Just do the voting ones, Roy, at this point, and then have a commitment to have certain committees come in.
I think
probably after
more thought about
maybe after you become chair, or as we get through budget season. CPPC has to come in, but unless you both think that we should have some.
Scheduled for April.
Maybe have somebody else come in, but we're going to be knee deep in budget matters and town meeting.
Community Path is particularly time urgent because there potentially a significant amount of money is going to be involved with their decisions. I think we need to be informed about what's going on there.
Okay. You've gone to the light board meetings because you were the liaison. It's been really helpful for you to report out on that. So what would you suggest there?
I would still say that, so the light board is a little different because it's independently elected. It's not a creation of the select board. I would ask, let me give that some thought.
I think you should still attend. I would appreciate if we could have Steve Poliansky come in, or whomever else is the new chair.
I still think it would be preferable if the chair of the other committee or board made the presentation to the select board, because I think it's better than getting it third hand basically from select board members to somebody else.
Just an example. I'd say Steve was incredibly helpful when I needed some information from him a few months ago. I mean, I think having the chair come in who's going to have the full picture of what the committee's doing, what the issues are, frankly, could be more informative and more accurate anyway.
And the other reason also for doing it this way is that, the minutes process is also very imperfect. Sometimes minutes are only available with a great delay. or they're not actually as complete as there might be. So I think just having a presentation by the chair with the opportunity to ask questions of the chair is just a more effective way of going about this.
We could perhaps have our assessor come in and report out to us,
If they're willing.
and perhaps the library trustees, if they're willing.
Although
Health.
permanent audit committee, we're voting.
That's a voting member.
Yeah.
Is that a voting member?
Yeah, it's listed as voting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's important to participation.
And also just noting, I thought long-term capital planning got dissolved.
It is. I think this is the old list.
Okay, I was going to say, because that was absorbed into
updated the list.
So I
comprehensive
think we're
capital
all, I
budget.
think we're all on board. So should we start at the top? Roy, is that?
Well,
I would recommend if we are staying, if we're switching to this fiscal year organization method, I'm wondering if it
just
makes
leave it the
sense
way
for
it is?
everybody to stay where they are. And just for the benefit of the public, I am still the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, which we hope to change as soon as I've shepherded the current projects through town meetings. I think it's not
We have to then
appropriate.
change that then.
But, so I would just stay. So Roy would roll off. That's the one thing we would change. Is that I would now be, instead of being a select board appointee, I'm a select board member, and we now have a vacancy. Roy will come off
right.
the Community Preservation Committee. So that's the one change that I think we make.
I want to go through these because
Yep.
I don't really want to, because Adam's on a number of things here, and I don't think we need to have any liaisons any further, so we can do that if you like.
Okay.
So do we want to keep Tom on the middle and high school building committee?
Yes, please.
Do we have to take a formal vote on this?
No,
If we're not changing
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
He's a voting member, so I think you have to take a formal vote. on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
but he's a voting member.
Currently that we're not
Yes,
replacing.
a member of that committee, not because he's a
right.
liaison to this board.
Sorry.
I think it would frankly be better if we heard from Bill Lavallo more frequently.
I agree on that.
It's been very rare that Tom's actually reported back to this board.
Do we have to appoint him again?
I mean, it might be a good idea considering this is MSBA kind of dictated.
All right, we have a
Rather,
motion then to appoint Tom. Is he willing to serve? Have we asked him?
I think he hasn't said, wasn't it?
No, but I would repeat that we need to ask Bill Lavallo. No, we don't have, he's not, again, that committee is independent of the select.
Can we have Bill come in the end of April?
Yeah, I
Should
would
ask.
mark it down.
Yes, okay.
So do I have a motion to reappoint Tom Caputo as the board designated member, select board designated member of the Belmont Middle and High School Building Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Light board, what do you want to do on that?
Pass on.
Leave it the way it is or just not reappoint? Just nothing?
It'll do nothing, yeah.
Same with that on Board of Library Trustees?
Right.
Yes.
So Capital Budget Committee, we need to appoint you.
No, that's,
If you need me to step in there, I can.
Vice Chair, it's statutory. Someone needs to go.
okay, that should be me then.
So I move to, do we have a motion to appoint? So the way this will work is we could just revisit this July 1st, Roy, right?
Yes.
So,
Yep.
so I have a motion to appoint Roy Epstein to be the voting member of the Comprehensive Capital Planning Committee through June 30th, 2023.
Amending that to Comprehensive Capital Budget Committee,
Yeah, well, we name it on the,
but otherwise so moved. You said Comprehensive Capital Planning Committee.
Oh, Budget Committee, I'm sorry.
You were mixing up long-term capital planning, which is fine.
It's what's the name?
The Comprehensive Capital Budget Committee.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I always,
That's okay. The reason I know is because I worked
Struggle
closely
with that,
closely with that group when we were
now
planning.
this is an important committee, the Capital Endowment Committee, and the member is a voting member.
No, actually.
They're not a voting member?
No, let me, this is worth a little discussion.
Yeah, it is worth a discussion.
A couple of weeks ago, I finally got the documentation that explains the governance of the Capitol.
Same here, yeah.
And we also have been in breach of our own, I guess it's a special act on this. The Capital Endowment Committee is not really a public body. it is purely advisory to the treasurer. The treasurer has sole authority to direct the investments in the capital endowment fund. The committee does not have voting rights over that. They are purely advisory to the treasurer. So I would say that I don't see a role for the select board in continuing that way. In fact, the bylaw says the treasurer should report to the select board monthly on what these investments are doing, which of course we've never done. The individuals who have been working with Floyd in the past on the investment decisions actually are very capable. And if they're willing to continue as advisors to the new treasurer, that's fine with me. But I think that the whole question of the way these investments are maintained and reported out and so forth is something that should be revisited when we have a new full-time treasurer. But for the meantime, I would say there's no need for the select board to be a member of this committee, which historically has met quarterly. We can contact the other individuals who are working with the treasurer and ask them if they'd like to continue. But in terms of monitoring what those funds are doing, I think the treasurer should just report quarterly or something to the select board, which is what the bylaw.
Well, I think the other part of that, Roy, and I've done an investigation on this as well, is the town meeting vote, and I forget when this occurred, it does discuss, it's clear that the spend of the capital endowment fund is under the purview of the select board.
Well, that's the other part that I wanted to turn to.
Right.
So the first piece is just directing the investments of the fund. The second part is actual spending out of the fund. And my reading of the special act is that the select board and town meeting are free to appropriate income. They're very specific about income. It doesn't give timing, so I think some agreement has to be made about income over what period. It's implied that it's annual, but it doesn't say the prior fiscal year or the year to date up to the town meeting or whatever. But the second piece is, so if income is not appropriated, it becomes part of the principal. Separately, it says principal of the fund can be appropriated, but only with a 2/3 vote of town meeting, which I don't think we've ever done.
Roy, can I back up and ask a clarifying question? You said, so income not expended becomes part of the principal, which presumably means that becomes a 2/3 requirement to release it. So how quickly does it become part of the principal?
Well, it's a little vague, but I think there has to be some account. I would almost, it makes sense to me to use fiscal year. And refer to the prior fiscal year, but I think that needs to be established. But to give an example, suppose the fund had $1 million.
It has more than that, actually.
Yeah, but if the fund had $1 million and it had $100,000 in income for the year, that $100,000 could be appropriated directly in the budget.
Can I ask one other question? Does that have to be expended on capital improvements?
Yes.
Or is, okay, so it's not operating.
Yeah, it's capital. It doesn't say what type of capital, just capital generally. But then there are two issues, and one of them you could spend more than $100,000, but it sounds like the piece that would be in excess of $100,000 actually requires the 2/3 vote. There's a separate issue which has not been relevant until potentially this year, which is that we've made this constant draw annually of $125,000, which was increased to $150,000. But I suspect that for the most recent year, by whatever time period you chose, there's actually going to be a loss. So the income is negative. And if you still appropriated $100,000, which I think would be sensible, that's not coming from the income anymore. That's actually an appropriation of principal when the fund has a loss for the year. And that again requires a 2/3 vote. Now, it might be that this is all getting too complicated and we should change the special act to something more streamlined, but I think we should follow the rules that we have, and these are the rules that are in
I think it would be
place now.
helpful, Elizabeth. I'm not sure where you got the information from. I had gotten it as well when I served this past year. When I served the year before you served, it might be helpful for you to get some of these. This is back in, when was this established?
1995.
Yeah, I think it's helpful as a town meeting vote, established from the Capital Endowment Fund, and I think Roy's point of view is consistent with mine, in that we've been allocating $150,000 from it, and the Capital Endowment Committee has always believed that it was under their purview to take that vote. It's really the select board's. And they have not reported back to us, so there's been that sort of control over that fund when really the select board, according to town meeting back in 95, really should have had the authority and purview over the expenditure of those funds.
I think the other point too is if that 150 does eat into the principal a little bit, then the vote at town meeting needs to be 2/3,
Right.
not
Yeah.
majority.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
Yeah.
But the fund right now is, I forget what it is.
4 plus, or have been 4 plus.
So I agree. Roy, thank you for doing the dig, but I am very, very conscientious about deferring to the authority of town meeting. And if this is an area where town meeting has given us authority, we ought to be following the dictates of town meeting, but also ought to be giving town meeting the authority where they've retained it.
Well, and then more broadly, not to drain the fund,
Yeah.
that we have such significant capital needs. We have
Yeah.
a pretty substantial fund here that's been.
We
building
could spend
up.
that fund tomorrow.
Yeah, and I would recommend making it a separate article at town meeting. I wouldn't lump
Really
it.
want to
agree.
thank, I mean,
I
as
agree.
Royce indicated, I know the members of this endowment committee, and they've done a really good job of investments,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a fund here that's for over $4 million. Not to say we drain it, but there's the needs for the capital needs are so extensive, perhaps we need to visit that and say, can we draw down more than the 150? I think it's something we should consider.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So is that something, just for clarification, is that something you want to consider for this town meeting or a future?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean,
But
I don't know whether we want
Well,
to.
that would shift the
I'm
numbers.
not sure we have positive income for this year.
And if we,
No, it would be a 2/3 vote if we were spending down below
Can
the.
we at least look at, excuse me, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, can we at least Elizabeth more fully understand the construction of this? And I don't know what your source was, I know what mine was. And then revisit this at some point?
Yes.
And to the extent that we believe that it's important to draw down, I'm not saying we draw down 7 figures from, I mean, Chris Doyle was in front of us on Monday. Elizabeth, you were here. Of course,
yeah.
you saw that. The list is endless, right?
Yep. And it always is. I mean, all the years that Anne Marie
Fairly
Mahoney.
tight year.
Yeah, it always is.
And it doesn't in any way impact our reserve calculation, which I don't think it would. We're spending a bunch of money here that we could use for capital purposes.
Floyd said quite often during these meetings that when this fund was first created, I mean, for lack of a better word, he said there wasn't any discipline and people thought they could spend it down kind of arbitrarily. So Floyd was actually, I believe, the source for this kind of fixed rule of spending no more than 125. And I said when I first was appointed to the committee a couple of years ago that I thought that should be increased. But 125 going to 150, I think, is still on the low side. But I think there should be a process in place that
but
people.
I do think you need to talk to Comprehensive Capital Budget Committee to see if they have, I know their list is almost complete in terms of the revenue towards the number of projects. So if they have projects identified and you want to raise that cap, then that's who you need to speak to.
I agree that Chris Doyle ought to be an integral part of this discussion, but also I'm concerned. Yes, there's an argument to be made for fiscal discipline, but if there are capital needs that we are not meeting today that increase our costs tomorrow, then that's a really bad use of funds. So if spending today saves us money down the road, we ought to spend today.
Understood. I'm just saying that there needs to be tight controls over this.
I think we're all on the same page.
So Elizabeth, we'll get you the information that.
That would be helpful.
And we can revisit this, Roy, at
Yes.
some point. Okay. So we don't need to take any action there. CPPC, the same, right? No liaison.
Right.
Right? Community
Yeah.
Preservation Committee, Elizabeth, we need
I'll
to
remain.
appoint Elizabeth to that. So I have a motion to appoint Elizabeth Dion to Community Preservation Committee
Through June 30th,
through June 30, 2023.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Concom, we don't need to do anything there, presumably. COA, nothing there. Economic Development, nothing there. Energy Committee, nothing there. What is, you're a member of,
That's me, yeah.
do you want to continue?
Yes, with all the rights and privileges.
Elizabeth,
Oh, no, it is all Roy's.
Well, you said in one of the meetings you spend more time on Concord Avenue than anyone, so we want to continue to make certain that's the case.
I'm going to write the next Wikipedia article on Concord Avenue.
Look, I mean, all kidding aside, I think you've done remarkable work there, and I appreciate your efforts.
Wholeheartedly agree.
That story is not over yet.
Yeah, so do I have a motion to appoint Roy Epstein to the Middle and High School Traffic Working Group?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Long-term capital
Is
planning.
no more.
So that's no more. What about the advisory board? That's a voting member. You want to continue on that?
Yes,
Elizabeth, unless you
in
want
fact,
responsibility for that.
Roy's got deep expertise there. If he's willing to stay on, I think that makes
We're
sense.
actually meeting at 10 a.m. on this.
Okay, do I have a motion to appoint Roy Epstein to the MBTA advisory board?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
PAC?
The bylaw says it's chair. This is something of an open item because we still haven't come to closure on.
Why don't you remain? You're going to be chair anyway.
Yeah,
We can appoint you now through June, and then you just roll on as chair.
that's fine.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Roy, are you about to, yeah, I agree. Are you about to reference the Collins Center report recommendation?
Yeah, I think we have to decide what we're doing.
So I have a proposal that I'm just throwing out
Yeah,
that we
please.
can think about. We have acted on unquestionably the most significant structural recommendation, which was the appointed treasurer. And I'm very, very pleased that that passed by such a resounding margin. I'm going to propose that the second change that we implement, there will be a special town meeting in the fall that we ask town meeting to put on next year's ballot an appointed board of assessors, because that is another integral part of the financial team and the structure of the town. What I'd like to do is focus on those two, because those are the two critical pieces. And if town meeting gets comfortable that those two transitions have gone well, then maybe a year from now at annual town meeting will be comfortable with a bunch of what I'd call cleanup changes. I don't think, it seems to me that the PAC has been functioning well. They've done a great job. I understand the recommendation, but this doesn't feel mission critical. I think if we can we've tackled the first mission critical item. The second mission critical item, I think, is the Board of Assessors. And if those two go successfully, then I think town meeting will be comfortable trusting us with some cleanup changes. And I'd call this a cleanup change.
Okay.
So just to consider.
I don't think it is mission critical. I mean, I'm a CPA, as you know, and it was an independence issue, but the members of the PAC don't seem to support the moderator appointing PAC members.
The members of PAC, who I think are just the highest quality professionals in this area, don't see a need for it. My other concern is that if we're not obliged to adopt every single thing the Collins Center has said. If we were so literal that the appointing authority of PAC should go to the moderator, then for consistency, they also recommended that the Capital Budget Committee be appointed by Select Board, but we just had a town meeting that went up to the Attorney General to confirm the Select Board as the appointing authority. I don't see the need to change all of that in the first year. So I'd like to.
Okay. All right, Elizabeth, I think you make good points.
So let's just wait and see. Let's take a wait and see approach.
Well, I mean, Adam and I stood out there on Tuesday night. You were here as well, and I think the treasurer vote was a validation of what the Collins Center recommended and what the Select Board supported.
Well, and I heard across the ideological spectrum in Belmont, there seemed very bipartisan support for the Collins Center report.
I mean, it was 60, whatever, won by a significant margin.
Yeah, it's a cross-cutting issue.
So do I have a motion to appoint Roy Epstein to the Permanent Audit Committee for term through June 30th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll just by statute, you'll remain? It's in the bylaw?
Right,
Okay.
and it's covered, right.
Rec Commission, not necessary. School Committee, not
Well,
necessary.
can I just speak to the school committee one? Because that's one that I would appreciate. So generally, I communicate with all three of you. That's obviously a given. But there are times that if there is an issue or there's some communication that needs to occur with the school committee, I go to the chair and the chair speak. So I just want it to be, if there's no liaison, then it defaults to the chair, and that's the person that I interact with to get, communication through to the school committee. That's all.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I think if I'm remaining as chair and it's mostly with budget matters, I can be that. And when Roy rolls on it July 1st, he can be that.
So it's the chair is the de facto.
I think it's important, look, we all have equal authority and we all have one vote. But I think it's important that the chair of the select board work closely with you and superintendent and the finance director and the chair of the school committee on budgetary matters. So when I roll off in June, that will be Roy.
Yep, okay. Just
Makes sense to me.
My one concern with the school committee is that is 2/3 of our operating budget. And so,
Clearly.
but I think the fact that the school committee, the chair sits on the warrant committee and the school committee sends a liaison to the warrant committee. So there are opportunities for communication there. And as long as I think we're comfortable that communication coordination is going on. And I also agree that it makes sense to have clear channels of communication. And I think it's appropriate.
So we just do it that way. I know Patrice is terrific at informing all of the members of the board, and particularly during this season, where our challenges will continue on the budget, particularly for the schools, Elizabeth. I know Patrice will be actively communicating with
yes,
both
sorry
of you as well.
in advance for all the phone calls.
No. This is important. I think we still have challenges here that we have to sort of deal with.
Okay, great.
Mark, I see.
Or opportunities, I should say opmunities. Yes.
Mike Widmer has been promoted. He actually has a question.
Yeah, Mike, I was running late, so I didn't put my computer. Mr. Widmer.
Thank you, Mark. Just wanted to endorse me as the moderator. I do not see the need to be the appointing authority on the Permanent Audit Committee.
Okay, Michael. So, Michael, thank you very much for that. But, Mike, I seek your counsel often, and I know other members of this board does as well. There are other recommendations within the Collins Center. Elizabeth mentioned one in particular. It would be helpful to continue to get some advice from you in terms of how we continue to move forward with those recommendations. So I know you'll be actively involved in that with all of us. Okay. The Structural Change Committee, it's a Structural Change Implementation Committee. There no longer is a need to have a member of the board there.
Yep.
They're often running.
Yeah.
Paul Richter is the chair, so any of you that want to attend those meetings can, of course.
But also they let them come report to us. They did so much work, and I don't want Belmont to be the place where good ideas go to die. So let's commit ourselves to listening and implementing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Elizabeth.
And I think if
perhaps you can
reports to us,
ask Paul whether I think they're wrestling with, at least I attended one meeting too, and they're sort of getting their head around which of the recommendations they should focus on initially. Mm-hmm. And so we can have Paul come in.
So Jennifer and I recently met with Paul to go over the list that they're discussing about. I think they said 17 at the last warrant committee. So I know they're kind of narrowing down the ones.
Well, over 400 recommendations within that report.
But I can ask if you'd like to come to a meeting.
Well, I think part of it as well, and each of us can help, there's a need to have select board, assistance on some of these, like, for example, if they want to continue to have discussions with Watertown on sharing of ambulance services, we can maybe help help them get a meeting there or something like that. Okay. What about TAC, Roy?
Same.
Okay, and the warrant committee is set.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, great.
Do you want to make a vote for the warrant committee?
I think
Well,
that's
I'm
just
chair,
automatic.
so
It's-
that's statutory, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but Roy, I would think that, at least from my point of view, it would be helpful if you're not the official liaison to TAC, but in your role as member of the Middle and High School Traffic Working Group, that I'm assuming that you have ongoing knowledge of what TAC is doing?
Yeah, there's some overlap, but we actually tried to find a line of demarcation between the traffic working group and TAC, which I think is working, so.
And one of the things that I think you and I at least agreed on, Elizabeth, I'm not certain if you were here for that meeting, that we had asked TAC to, it's a separate issue, to look at the issue of strike from the post office. I think it'd be good to visit that at some point.
Right, well, I thought they're obligated to, they said 3 months.
Yes, I know they're currently working on signage to make
Yeah,
it a little
so
clearer.
we just sort of keep up, I won't be chair at that point, but just keep a beat on that, because I think both Roy and I feel very strongly that needs to be looked at.
I would suggest after town meeting, maybe?
Yeah, no, we don't need,
I'm just saying.
let's have them come in now.
You don't have free time on your
We
hands
need
right now?
we need a few more contentious issues to deal with.
Yeah, just a couple more.
We'll really try to fill the room if we can. All right, thank you, Roy. I appreciate the clarity that you've provided on the rules, and I support them wholeheartedly, and I think you're right on the liaison issues.
Likewise, thank you for the thought that
Thank
you
you for
put into
doing
them.
that. Okay, so the next order of business is to ratify the appointment.
Yep. Here.
Maybe you could walk us through
Yeah, I
exactly
apologize.
the town council.
Yeah, the wrong letter went out. I apologize.
Different letter?
This is just one that is a definite term of time and then references.
That's the
references-
You
MGL.
want to chat briefly about this? Came up the night of the election, perhaps for the viewing audience and for our edification. Clearly, the vote was enormously successful. We're thrilled and pleased that we are now an appointed treasurer of town, and the statutory authority to do that is with the town administrator, correct? We're going to talk about your job description in a moment. Can you just, I know you talked to town council.
I did.
When was the effective date of the vote? And then, maybe you could just walk us through all of that, please.
So I spoke to town council the day after the election.
Yep.
The election, the effective date of the question 2 was the following day.
Okay, good.
I have provided on Wednesday a letter to Jennifer Hewitt to serve as the treasurer collector. The letter that you have in front of you has it extending to the end of the fiscal year. That's only just to give us time to find someone. We have the job description, which we'll be talking about in a moment, along with the posting. We'll be posting that on Monday, assuming, a couple months to find an interview and then have that person start. We just figured the end of the fiscal year was the best time to do it. We referenced Mass General Law, and really it's just my appointment and the board with a ratification from the board. My conversations with council has said that then any write-in is at that point null and void.
I mean, do we really have to?
Yes.
That's fine. The board does have to ratify.
You have to ratify my appointment.
Appointment?
That's right.
So, a couple of, I had a couple of questions both on the temporary appointment of Jennifer and the posting for the permanent position that I'd like to run through, just because I think this, understandably, will get a lot of scrutiny by people. I think we just have to.
We want to go to that? Want to go to the posting discussion?
Well, let me start.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the appointment of Jennifer in the first place.
That's right.
I certainly would defer to George on this, but my understanding is that any treasurer, even a temporary or an interim, has to be bonded within 10 days. And if they're not bonded within 10 days, the select board actually has to declare the office vacant.
Yep.
I know that Floyd was on some schedule with a surety company, and I'm not sure which one, but there must be a record in his office that every April that he re-upped his.
Yeah, I've bonded treasurers in the past. In previous towns, it's paperwork that you file and you just get approval. They do a credit check, they run a history.
There's
and-
some process and some amount of the bond and so forth. So that's,
It's a relatively easy process.
So presumably, we could make our ratification subject to the condition that.
I just think it should be specific that Jennifer needs to be bonded within
Sure.
10 days.
I agree.
10 business days?
Well,
That would be.
Business days would be helpful considering we're dealing with business to do it.
Yeah, we're under 10
Well,
days. We're by pretty quickly. So we're appointing her today.
You're ratifying, the appointment was made on Wednesday, you're just ratifying it retroactively.
Okay, well, on the
10
clock
days,
started.
10 days is a week from Friday,
10 days is a week.
from today.
Friday, yep. So we can work on getting it our bonded next week.
If it is in fact 10,
Calendar days as opposed to business days.
If it doesn't reference, then it would be calendar days.
how difficult it is to get bonded.
I think it's automatic.
It's not, it's really a credit check.
Okay. I agree with Elizabeth.
You may have to pay a premium on the policy. I don't
That's
think
right.
It's part of the budget.
Okay, go ahead. What else?
Okay, so then more generally, so that's Jennifer, and it should work.
Do you want to do that first before we go to the job description? Or do you want to wait?
Yeah, let's appoint Jennifer.
Let's do that. And then, yeah, I had a couple questions on the job description as well.
Go ahead. We have a motion on this, subject to, we have a motion to ratify the appointment of Jennifer Hewitt as interim treasurer collector.
Just treasurer collector, not interim, just because I have the date. I would just say treasurer
We
collector,
don't need interim?
you don't need interim.
Because it's got a terminal date on it.
Yep. It
All
has a
right,
term on
so,
it.
okay, so the motion, I believe, should read, a motion to ratify the appointment of Jennifer Hewitt as treasurer collector through June 30th, 2023, subject to her being bonded.
Effective April 5th.
Okay.
Second.
So moved, or did
So
you?
you have to move it.
Oh,
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so is someone taking minutes?
Oh, sorry.
Did they get that motion?
It's part of the, sorry, did the motion say subject to being bonded?
Yes.
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 Yeah, okay.
He did say so.
So effective when? Wednesday?
Effective Wednesday, April 5th.
All right, someone taking minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully they got that motion. Okay, Roy, job description, and Elizabeth. Go ahead, sir.
All right, so I guess the job description actually takes precedence over the job posting.
The posting's generated from the description.
Let's go to the show description then.
Okay, so the description. Hold on just a second. Okay. The description under recommended qualifications, education, training, experience,
Hold on. Yes.
says certified treasurer collector per N unless waived by the town administrator. I don't think the town administrator has discretion to waive.
So
Oh, is certification different?
certification is it's not a requisite. You don't have to have it. It's something that people get through the state.
But is that separate from bonding?
Yes, that's separate from bonding.
Okay.
That's not being bonded.
All right, that was,
Yeah, this is through a Massachusetts program that they offer.
okay, that's fine. Then up in the top,
So you're okay with that?
yeah,
Okay.
in the top, in essential functions, just some wording issues. I think where it says division, it should say department and divisional should be departmental.
Which,
Where
okay.
are we here?
Is that development
Yeah, and
monitor annual division operating budget? Yeah.
And enforce divisional operating rules, those are departmental. But then more substantively, I think the essential functions should include,
All right, so the final order of business is discussion and possible vote on the appointment of a parking clerk.
Oh, yes. Oh, we had one more item.
Perhaps, maybe just give some background on this, Patrice, because
Sure, so-
I wasn't familiar with this.
I can tell personally.
Talking to Floyd, I understood that we had done this back in 20.
So personally, back in the early days of my municipal career, I was a parking clerk in another town. So I understand.
That's great. So are we appointing you today?
No.
So there's good career trajectory for someone who takes on this role.
Yeah, well, there's that. And just, I kind of have an understanding of what,
Oh, so you started as a parking clerk, you end up as a town administrator?
There you go.
That's-
I think that should be a selling point.
Started working in the loading dock.
gonna put that in the
CEO of
post.
company,
That's
right?
right, absolutely.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
so the treasurer, since I have been here in Belmont, the treasurer, Floyd Carmen, has been the parking clerk. Now that with the transition to an appointed treasurer, the fact that the second position, the assistant treasurer, is also vacant, to put that position or put that additional administrative duty on an office that is really going through a transition and needs a lot of work to kind of figure out, I felt that it wasn't a useful use of the time of any assistant or treasurer coming in. So I looked around town to see who could potentially fulfill that role. Under Mass General Law, the statute clearly states that it can be combined with another position within town, as it was with me when I started. I was in another position and I took on that role. So customarily, statutorily, a parking clerk is somebody that has a position within a municipality, and then this is just added responsibility that you have to have. You have to have a parking clerk. So, and I
What does the
think
parking clerk do?
the parking clerk
I'm sorry to be.
and the chief, I was going to have the chief on, but he wasn't.
Chief here? I just saw him walk by here.
The police chief?
Yeah.
Oh, can you go grab him, Franklin, please?
What is the parking clerk? So Floyd told me, I didn't recall this. I don't think I was on the board at the time. You probably know this, Roy. That it's a one-time appointment. So we didn't have to appoint every year, which was kind of an odd thing.
It is. It's,
I wonder is that
I think
actually
it's,
statutorily? I mean,
it is because it's tied to a municipal.
we did that when he was elected treasurer, whenever the year was, 2008, I believe. Was it, when did he
Yeah,
was elected treasurer?
it's an indefinite appointment.
He was, when did we appoint, when did the select board appoint him?
It must have been when he was first elected.
Was it 2005?
So
Odd. So it was a one-time appointment, that was it, so.
it is. So so there's a system in place within the state. There's a couple of vendors that do this. When a police officer goes out and gives a ticket, it gets uploaded into a software program, and it's on your record. So if you get pulled over, an officer will be able to see if you have, outstanding parking
Prior
tickets.
citations, yeah.
So the job now for the parking clerk is to go into that system to either dismiss or clear that particular parking ticket. So you either waive it based on you waive the fee. The fee comes along. As a parking clerk, you can waive the fee and say there was no violation here. I agree with what the person who got the ticket. I agree with what they're telling me. I waive the ticket. Or the other option is you say, no, sorry, you have to pay the ticket. And then once they pay the ticket, it gets cleared in the system. So any parking ticket that you might have will get cleared as soon as it's waived or you pay it. And the parking clerk's responsibility is to reach out to those residents or whoever it is that violates the parking, or and also just make sure there's a clear record. That's what the parking
So
clerk.
the parking clerk can waive a ticket without consulting with anyone?
Yeah, I used to do it. So,
Well,
Kind of an odd thing. Police, Floyd, just to finish my question for a minute.
Yeah.
So a police officer can pull someone going 100 miles an hour on Concord Avenue, not that they will, and
Yep.
get a citation. That's not part, that's a
no,
moving violation.
this is parking.
This is parking only. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Roy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Patrice, just to be clear, so the parking clerk, select board appointment.
It is under the statute.
The
Yep,
clerk would report to the select board.
sure.
Okay.
It does have a budget too. It's very small, but it has a budget
Does?
And it pays a stipend.
and it pays a stipend.
What's the stipend?
So the stipend currently is $5,000.
A year?
Do you have a proposed candidate for us?
I do. So
Yeah.
looking
Getting down to
over,
brass tacks.
Yeah, I know. This is kind of like a new thing. I mean,
No, it's you learn something every day.
so the reason why I asked the police chief to be here is because I had tapped someone in his department to do this. So he was here. I don't know what happened to him. But anyway, John Steves.
He's there.
Oh,
hey, Chief, how are you?
Hi, how is everybody?
Thank you for joining today. I saw you walking earlier outside the office, so you're back in the
I'm
police
in the
station.
car. We have a trial starting today, a big trial, so I've been kind of following
Oh,
it.
that's right. Yeah, I know which trial that is. Okay.
So Jamie, I just walked them through what a parking clerk does, and I am about to let them know that I am recommending John Steves be appointed as the parking clerk, given that John Steves is very much in tune with parking in this town. He sets up the meters, he programs them, he understands the software system.
Currently a patrol officer?
No, he's not, and you cannot appoint a
What's his role?
parking clerk.
Department.
Do you want to describe his role, Jamie?
John has many roles within the department. He's a tech service civilian. He's the one that manages radios, computers, does things with the building, and also with the motor vehicles. And, you know, I think though he'll be able to take this on. It's one more role. It's sort of like if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. But John's confident he'll be able to work with this. He's got a great institutional knowledge, both parking issues and everything in Belmont, and he knows how we work on this side. So it will be, I think it'll be beneficial.
Sounds like a great
Seamless.
appointment to me.
I think that would be great. What I did admire Floyd's approach to this is he actually took a pretty hard line when people contested parking tickets. So I would like John to continue in that spirit and actually just to make sure this gets off on the right foot. I would like a report, assuming we appoint John, of how many individuals have a lot of outstanding parking tickets now and what the dollar value of those tickets are. And then going forward, periodically, it may not be more than once a year, I think John should report to us how many tickets are dismissed and so forth, because I think enforcement actually should be.
Why don't we do that quarterly?
Strict or
Once a
quarterly.
year, yeah.
Excuse me, Roy, if I may. During prior to COVID, we used to come out with probably twice a year, which we called a tow list, which we would get a list from the treasurer's office that would indicate which people had not paid parking fines. And usually when we had someone with up around $500 worth of fines, we would go out and tow the vehicle. We would actively look for the vehicle and tow it so that they would pay those fines. So since actually this in the last 2 months, we've reactivated that program again. We kind of put it on stop during COVID, but so we have all that information. And I don't know about how many tickets are canceled. That would be something maybe John can look into the records for, but all that you're asking to do is very simple.
Okay, good. And I noticed in 20A also, there's a booting provision. So I guess that's, in addition to towing, we can boot if we so chose.
Do we have?
Just as long as it's not a member of the board car that's booted, okay?
I'll put that in.
I always say, Roy, just remember, it applies to everybody.
Yeah.
I would hope
right.
we are diligent about not getting fined in the first place, but paying them should they come.
No, that's
Setting a good
right.
example.
But I think getting a quarterly report is important, so thank you for that, Roy. All right, so Chief, if you're supportive of that, I mean, I think we are as well, Patrice.
Yeah, sounds like a great candidate. Thank you.
So do we have a motion on this one?
I would move to appoint John Steves as a parking clerk for an indefinite term.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that takes care of business today. In fact, in terms of parking rules and regulations, I think it's an agenda topic for Monday night, right?
It is. Yep. And Jamie.
So we will be visiting, Chief, you will be here Monday to discuss that agenda topic on parking fines and rules and regulations, and
And the petitioner will be here as well.
petitioner will be here as well for it, the citizens petition. So just to give you a heads up. So we have a meeting Monday night, April 10th at 7 p.m. and fairly robust.
I've also asked for an additional meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think we've all responded on that.
Yep.
Tuesday,
So-
8 a.m.
8:30.
8:30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so we
I
can.
had a 9, but
It literally should only take 10
I was
minutes.
going to say, I've got
it's a
a hard.
10-minute
I've got-
meeting?
All I need you to do is approve and sign the warrants.
Okay, fine.
And based
Okay.
on your actions Monday night, I don't know what that looks like yet.
And
Okay.
is there an ATM planning meeting on Wednesday now that I'll be attending?
Is there what?
ATM,
Yes, that's why it's Wednesday morning.
Sure.
Yep. Yep.
And I won't be there, so Mike Whitmer and I'll have to talk to separately.
yeah, you can't
I
come
can't be
now.
there. Can't be
Yeah.
But it's fine.
How do we do that?
It's fine. I think we worked out anything related to CPC at our last meeting.
Okay,
So
all right.
it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really productive meeting. I'm excited and look forward to continuing our work together, Roy.
This is great, yeah.
And I look forward to working with you
Likewise.
as well.
You guys switch seats, Roy. You guys switch.
You can sit there.
Well,
You like sitting there.
Yeah, I got used to it.
You like sitting there. Although there was times in which the camera wasn't quite catching him.
That's true.
So maybe that's intentional. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrice.
Yep.
Thank you, Franklin, for coming.